You can be what you wanna be if you do what you gotta do. It all happens at Hillary's house, where all you gotta be is you. Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hillary's House. This week I talked to my dear friend Biba Atta, otherwise known as my nature church friend. This week, I came across the article that I wrote when I originally decided to do the Hillary's House podcast. I remembered after reading that article that the original purpose of the Hillary's House podcast was to highlight how people in and around Wilmington, Delaware were doing work that I personally could support and wanted to support. It was right after I had finished defending my doctoral dissertation and had spent a month in Nassau in the Bahamas doing a project called the Moonflower Room, which was a temporary dining club for the National Art Gallery of the Bahamas. It was a little bit of a challenging time, and I felt a little bit like a fish out of water, even though I grew up in Wilmington for a good portion of my life. I also remember that I actually recorded the first episode. And that first episode for Hillary's House actually ended up becoming the first episode for the Rosehip Road Trip. The Rosehip Road Trip is another project that I did, and you can see the interviews and episodes of that podcast by going to my website, www.instituteforearthbasedliving.com. If you click on the About menu, you'll see the Rosehip Road Trip, and you'll find the different episodes there. But surely the woman who you are about to encounter today was one of the saving graces of that time. You'll hear the story of us meeting during the episode, but just so you know, the background that I'm using is the same labyrinth where we met and that we discussed during this episode. It used to be a water tower, and it was turned into a labyrinth, ironically or not ironically, at another art museum, the Delaware Museum for Contemporary Art. I'm so grateful to remain connected with Biba on a weekly basis, despite the fact that we're thousands of miles apart. Here's to the wonders of modern technology and the ways that they actually can support the ancient technologies of human connection, intuition, environmental appreciation, and relationship with ourselves, one another, and the environment.
Hi, Biba! How are you?
I'm wonderful, and how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Better now that you are here at Hillary's house. And I wanted to make sure that I am sitting in the mulch, which doesn't surprise you.
No, not it.
Because I wanted to make sure that you had the Southern California experience and got to see that aloe flower.
Yeah.
And also, you'll see the shadow is from some palm branches that are just in this lovely breeze. It's a perfect San Diego day today.
A little jealous.
It's not a bad quarantine situation.
No, not at all. As you can see, I've gotten dressed up for you.
I see that.
And got a little bit of green in here for, nature church vibes because I'm not outside.
Okay. So I wanted to start out by saying I cannot remember my life without you in it. And I don't want to imagine what it would be like without you in it. And you have been both a rock and a cradle for me since we met. And I'm so grateful to have you in my life.
Oh, I received that, and I echo your sentiments. You have been such an amazing friend. I am so grateful that I listened to intuition to invite you to that first nature church, even though it was, by that point, it was a very sacred experience for me. And I didn't know you. I didn't know you at all. You were a complete stranger. And I just got this message, like, you should invite her to nature church. And I'm having this inner war with myself, like, for real. But nature church is mine. That's where I do me and really be me out in my element. And, now the universe is giving me this message to invite a complete stranger. And I did. And ever since the very first time that we walked together, I could see why. You're very special. You are a huge part of my life. And I can't imagine my life without you either. So I love you so, so much.
Thank you. I received that. Now, the first thing that I wanted to talk about, you kind of already have gotten into, of course, because you're over there reading my mind. But one of the things that's really important to me generally in life is origin stories. And I think that so much of my work is about writing origin stories and about understanding origin stories, and so much of the work that I do with other people is about helping them rewrite their origin stories, or for some people write it for the first time, because a lot of people carry their origin stories around, whatever they thought was passed on to them, rather than owning their story for themselves and realizing that your origin story is where you started, not where somebody else starts it. And I feel like so much of Nature Church is about us walking each other home, literally and figuratively, and helping each other write and rewrite, claim and reclaim our own origin stories in so many ways. And so I was wondering, if you were to tell the origin story of Nature Church, how would you tell that story?
Oh, if I was to tell the origin story of Nature Church, I would say that it is one that's as old as time. It is one that is completely present in all of us. And it is something where when you do it, even for the first time, whenever you're out in nature in general, there is some sort of connection, which I can't explain. It's outer worldly, it's inner worldly, that occurs when you step out and you're amongst all that is nature, right? You don't have to have an ongoing relationship. It's like your body just knows. And depending on what your intention is, as soon as you step foot out there on an area of grass barefoot, or if you're hugging a tree, or if you're on a hike, or you're in a city and there just happens to be a small park, whatever your intention typically is, like, nature really works pretty fast to facilitate whatever it is that you're asking for. So it's a powerful and magical place to be. It can be anywhere. It's just a facilitation of a relationship that you already have, whether you're aware or not. Like, nature will remind you that you've had this relationship with it since forever. So I'd say that the origin story really is that. It's been since the very beginning of before you even knew that it existed.
Yeah, I love that. Can you talk a little bit about why you started Nature Church and what Nature Church has been to you, and what the purpose of it is?
Well, originally, when I started Nature Church, I didn't really even start it. I was searching for something. It was like a January when I first started going, and I had made this intention that I wanted to be out more. I wanted to get out and just kind of do something that's different, just explore a different area, explore a different place. And I was on Meetup, and I happened to go on, and I'm in a bunch of groups, and I see this group. I'm like, oh, Nature Church with so-and-so. And I signed up for it. And it was really, really early in the morning. I hadn't been to this particular park in like a really long time, and I didn't make the time. So I'm messaging her, and I'm just upset because I missed when they first started walking. So something said, well, you don't have to go with anyone to do this. You can just walk by yourself and figure it out. I had never really, again, been in that park. So there's so many trails and other things in there. I didn't know where I was walking to. I didn't know where I was going to end up. So it's like, well, I'm not going to waste time, and I should just be out here. And the minute that I stepped foot, like, got out of my car and started walking, and I just felt the sun against my skin. I felt this soft groundedness beneath my feet. I was listening, and I became even more present. So whatever feeling I had, that anxious feeling of, oh, you're running late, it melted like immediately. Heard the birds singing. I just started smiling. My body started smiling, and it just felt like a big exhale, like whatever pressure was released from my shoulders, and I was fully allowed and able to be present with where I was. And from that point on, I said, I'm going to walk here every week, And I would love to walk with the other lady who's doing this. But if I don't, I'm going to continue this because I really need to be out here. I was kind of having a walking meditative prayer. I was talking to myself. All of a sudden, I'm in gratitude. I was crying in there. I didn't even know, like, what the hell was happening. I was just going for a walk, and it's like all these emotions and feelings and sensations and things that I wasn't expecting for that to be that for me. And I wanted it every week, every day, if I could possibly have it. So I started going to nature church weekly, and it was my sacred time with myself to unwind and unpack some of my things that I had gone through during the week. I could use it for a walking meditative prayer. I could be grateful. I could say a prayer for other people. I love trees. I've always loved trees. I feel like they're like my little soulmates. So I'm always touching the trees in there. I hug them. I like to feel their energy. So it's just a time when I can really do all of those things. And I feel like whatever it is that I walk in with, whatever burden, whatever negative feeling, sadness, anger, whatever, when I come out, I've just been wrung out, and everything that's not mine is just taken from me. It's absorbed from my body, and I've been given the positive energy and just nourishment that I didn't know I needed until, that happened like the first time. So it's vital to my self-care, and I have to go like every week.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, on a practical level, what nature church has looked like for us? Like, what is nature church? People are like, what is nature church? People are always like, what is that? And people always ask me that. I'm like, no, I have nature minutes. Church. Like, everyone knows there's like the rest of my week, and there's that time, which is like church. Like how everyone has the time they go to church, that is our church. That is nature church. So do you want to tell people what nature church is?
Sure. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. Nature church really nature church really is just a time to commune with yourself, with the universe, with friends. If you're walking, it's a time to be introspective. It's a time to be meditative. It's regardless of your religious background, your faith. It's a time that you can do that just out in nature. It really is. You're walking and you're just feeling, you're present, and you're listening for messages. And the messages can come in so many different ways, just like church, whether you're getting messages from the word that the preacher is preaching, or you're getting messages from the songs that people are singing, or the feeling that you have when you're in there. It's the same, just outside. You can still get messages from universe, God, whatever you want to call source. It's just a really beautiful experience. And I tell people that nature church really is wherever you are in nature. I've had nature church in New York, of all places, like, home of the concrete jungle. But if you can find a park, if you can find a patch of grass and take your shoes off and just stand on it and just become more present, breathe deeply, you can feel true nature church in the middle of anywhere. It's all the things.
Absolutely. It is all the things, literally.
Yeah. Yes. And what we've used it for really is a safe space to hold a new friendship, a new connection, a new relationship, kinship even. So we've allowed for nature church really to be a place where our connection has deepened from messages that we've both received while we're out there. It's been a place where we're both able to disconnect from whatever's going on and to just kind of let go of all the crap that happens in life, because it's inevitable. It's part of what we experience. Yeah. And it's this safe space that we have. We bond so much there. And because we're so fully present while we're walking, we're present with each other. So it's just a different way even to communicate, because you're not distracted by, oh, hold on a second, girl, my phone is going, let me call you back. Right. Because it's like sacred time that you're having with someone important. And I'm grateful that we've been able to continue to do it, given that, at first we're walking together physically in a park and having conversation, laughing, crying, holding hands, all these other things to, okay, well, let's try and do this on video. So I'm holding the phone and I'm walking and like, oh God, stick, let me step over this, to now we can be on the phone and be walking together and still have that connection,
And I think the point that you made that seems really salient is that in the same way that people would go to church and the focus is on honoring, sanctifying, worshiping something in common, and that it's that whatever is being worshiped, honored, venerated is a common focus. And I think that's what makes church, is that there's a common focus. And I think that's what makes church powerful, regardless of what people's beliefs are. And for us, nature is the common focus.
Yes.
And it allows us to explore other aspects of ourselves individually, but also to explore aspects with ourselves with each other.
Yes, absolutely.
And like you said, now that we're still walking together on the phone, 3,000 miles apart, but still both in nature. And so we're able to still describe to each other, that's still the focus. And we're still describing to each other in these vastly different environments what we're experiencing, what we're seeing, what we're feeling. And we're both pretty sensual, visceral, communicative, descriptive individuals. So not hard for us to describe exactly what it is that we're experiencing. So I think that's a really special part of Nature Church.
Absolutely.
What's exciting you right now?
What's exciting me right now? Oh, let's see. What's exciting me right now is the burgeoning love affair.
Okay.
Yeah, burgeoning love affair is exciting me right now. A deepening connection and bond with my closest friends and even with my family. Corona has been many things to many people, including to me. And it has forced me to be creative in how I show up for myself, how I show up for the people that I care deeply about. It is forcing me to reinforce and hold the line for certain boundaries in order to be able to keep those relationships close and those things that are close to me. And as a result of having to be creative, I'm finding that I am definitely bonding more deeply with my family and with my friends and people that I just, wouldn't have even expected. Relationships are changing with people who are acquaintances. Like acquaintances, are becoming more like, oh, you're actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not my girlfriend. I don't need to tell you my business, but you're actually, we can talk about something a little bit other than work, or we can talk about something a little bit other than this thing that we've come here to do. We can be honest and say, okay, when someone says now, like, how are you doing? It takes on a different meaning. Like, people really want to know. So yeah, like the way we're connecting is exciting me.
One of the things that I associate with you, and I would imagine that people do, and I would even go as far to say that this is something that's important to you and is a piece of your identity, or that you would own as a piece of your identity, is your love of traveling. And traveling all over the world, and traveling freely, traveling alone, feeling like you have a sense of who you are and who you can be as a result of moving through and around different kinds of environments and getting to see how people live. And so I wanted to ask you, what is the best trip that you've ever taken, or what has been the most powerful trip that you've ever taken?
Okay. Wow. The best trip that I've ever taken. So many. There have been so many trips that I've taken, but the best one is also the most powerful one, which is when I went with my sister to Nigeria. Many of you probably don't know me. My father is Nigerian, and my mom, however, is American. I was born here. I've grown up here. I had been to Africa before. I went to Morocco once, and which was a powerful trip in and of itself. But we've been asking, interestingly enough, my father to take us to Nigeria since we were little girls, because we wanted him to show us, where were you born, Dad? And where'd you go to school? And show us the corner store or wherever, like that you did X, Y, and Z. And we want to meet your friends that you went to school with. Just because, it was an opportunity really to just understand him better, get to know him more on another level. Because, a lot of us as children, we just think that our parents start and end with us. But they have full-blown lives before we even show up on the scene, right? So it's like we get a chance to get to know more about them, get to know more about him and his life before we came and before we see what it is now. But he wasn't able to go, but we still went. And when we did, I know that I felt so deeply connected as soon as I stepped foot on the soil, which I always do when I go. Even when I was in Morocco, I don't have family there. It was just a pleasure trip, really. And when I stepped foot on African soil, it's like I could feel it, like my body is like, you know where you are. And so that was, you know, powerful in and of itself, but it felt that much more magnified when we were in Nigeria, because it's like, you are home. You know, that kind of thing. So we had gone to Nigeria. We had gone to Abuja first, which is the capital. Then we had gone to Lagos, which is the big major city. And then after that, we flew to Ghana. And so it was like a combination trip. But when we were in Abuja, we met so many of our family. My grandfather, he had 5 wives, staggered and some together, as the Muslim faith allows for a man to have 4. So he's got like 20 some odd children. And of course, they have a lot of children too. So we're meeting all of these aunts, all of these uncles, all of these cousins. And we're like, okay, we got to write a list. We got to, okay, what's your name again? Okay, how many kids do you have? Okay, what are their names? Can you put them in order? How old? It's like hundreds of them. So we're meeting all like, and we didn't even meet anywhere near everyone. We met a lot of people. But it just felt like there were certain puzzle pieces that were now coming and being placed into this puzzle as part of like my story, my identity, a part of my origin story, as you mentioned. And then to be able to be there and do that with my sister, it definitely strengthened our bond like in a way that I couldn't have seen. It felt like it also healed a lot for me. It healed a lot for me around my relationship with my sister. It healed a lot for me around my relationships with my father, and it healed a lot for me, like, period. So I came back feeling so different, but I knew that when I left, I was going to, in essence, die. Like the person that I was before I left that's the end of her, and I'm going to come back a completely different person. And I remember telling my mom, I said, you know, just so you know, me and my sister Deja, we're getting ready to go over here and we're going to die. So the people that you know us to be today while we're here are not going to be the people once we get off that plane that comes back. And she said, well, is that a threat? And I said, no, not at all. I'm just letting you know that that's happening. We can't possibly be the same people when we return. And we absolutely have not been, can't go back to those people. And the minute that we came back, like, we knew we wanted to go back there. So we planned pretty quickly to return and do the same trip. We stayed a little bit longer, a week in each place, and it was also monumental. But even though Nigeria feels like home in terms of origin story, Ghana really feels like this is my home. So it was a combination of all those things. I've never felt like that for any trip that I've done, no matter how much I've loved it. But that was something that was completely different.
When are you going back?
I don't know when I'm going back to West Africa, per se. Like, if I had my way, I would go back there every year. It would be like my own personal pilgrimage. But as you mentioned, I love travel. I want to see the world. I want to see it all. And there's so many places that I want to see that I haven't visited before. Mm-hmm. So I have to be very selective about where I'm going. So I'm already planning, you know, now with Corona, I'm hoping that it still happens, but planning to go to Japan in September. I already have that trip booked. That would be my first time over in Asian Pacific Island area. So that would be quite a different experience than any I've had. And I'm planning to do South Africa at the end of the year with my sister. And, you know, we'll see who else might pop up. I'm really pushing it. I'm a little crazy on my travel, y'all. I might try to go to Ghana from South Africa before I come home, like a little couple of day trip. Yeah, it's just, you know, little piddling 5 to 8 hour trip. You know, it's nothing. Yeah. It's light work. Yeah. But it feels like I am probably going to go back to Ghana at the very least in December.
Why is travel important to you?
Travel is part of my origin story. I feel like, looking at it now, like there have been people in my life who've done things, who've influenced my travel, and they have been meant to be on the journey to facilitate me taking the steps to get to the point where travel is just this thing that I do. It's a part of my life. It's a part of who I am. I feel like it was always a part of what I was put here to do. But it's really, really important to me because it helps me to discover even more of who I am, and it connects me with other people that I wouldn't normally be connected with. Once people come here to this country, it's not that those countries are no longer a part of them. It's like you have to change your identity in order to survive here in the US. So when someone is home, you know, it's different. When they're amongst their friends, they're amongst their family, they're some places where they were born or they're familiar, they don't have the mask on. And you really truly get to see people. You really truly get to connect with people on another level. And you don't have to say a word to anybody, just simply observing, eating the food, seeing the life, listening to people speak. You really do start to see that they may do things a little bit differently than we do because of how they speak or the language or the food that they eat, but everyone really is the same. You know, everybody in essence, at the bare minimum, like we're really truly all one. So getting to travel is twofold. I get to connect with people, different cultures on another level, and also travel like saved my life. It changed my life. It saved my life. It's made me who I am. It helped me to develop confidence in myself when I didn't have any. It has helped me to face fears that have been hard here. It's helped me to feel more connected, more deeply connected and loving of my body. It's done so much. Like I can't imagine my life without you, I can't imagine my life without travel either. I think that as long as I can do it, I will continue to do it.
You mentioned that you have a trip planned to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And a trip planned to South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Besides those places, what's one place that you haven't been that you'd like to go, and why would you like to go there?
Probably could just roll out a long sheet that just
you
runs
only have to pick one.
Oh, that's just simple. I've been to every state, and now after that, I've challenged myself to go to every continent. So I've been to most of them except for two, South America and Antarctica. Antarctica is probably the place that I would say that I really want to go to, because it's very difficult to get to. I kind of just want to get it out of the way. I've seen all sorts of deals to get to South America, and there's a few places there that I'm interested in going, but Antarctica, it's uncharted territory. So the way that except for, you know, climate change, unfortunately, the only way that it's different is for that reason. It's not different because people have come and globalization has encroached upon this town and has turned it into McDonald's Central, Starbucks all over the place. People are down there speaking English. It's native. It's raw. It is what it was. To whenever, except for the changing of the environment. Other than that, like it's the same. So I want to go there and see what is this place and be able to experience like the way that it looked tens, hundreds of years ago, except for, again, climate change. So it's exciting to be someplace that hasn't really been touched and spoiled by globalization. So that's one place I do really want to go.
You mentioned earlier that one of the things you're excited about is that you have a burgeoning love affair. I was wondering if you could talk about...
You know me so well. Like, what?
The most important lesson that relationship has given to you in life. Not necessarily this relationship, but in general, what have you found to be powerful about relationship, and what is the greatest lesson that you have learned by being in a relationship? And that could be romantic relationships, that could be relationships with close friends, you know, the sacred circle, your family. What have you learned through the process and the experience of being in deep and intimate relationship with other people?
Wow, that's a phenomenal question. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned as a result of being in relationship with other people, whether romantic or otherwise, is one that, again, we are all one. That's the first thing. I think the biggest thing, though, is how people really do change you. They heal you. It's just necessary. They are mirroring you. They are meant to trigger you. They are meant to help you to go deeper. They're meant to inspire you and to motivate you, to love you, to show you the places where you should love yourself more. They're meant to build you and hold you. And the relationships that I have really opened my eyes to a lot about me. And regardless of the kind of relationship that I have, whether it's one that's, it could be toxic, it could be one that is, you know, short term, it could be one that's lifelong, like one with my mom. Those relationships have really shaped me and have put me on my journey or moved me back towards the journey that I'm destined to be on, and to help me to be who I am. More than anything, as much as travel has been an important part of my life, I mean, the people in my life have really, truly been the reason I am who I am.
Do you think that travel, or that being in relationship, is its own form of travel?
Ooh, I really love that. Yes, I do. Like, now that I'm like putting it together, like, absolutely, it's its own form of travel. Traveling from people to people.
Yeah. Well, each person, I mean, each person is its own, you know, ecosystem, but also I feel like each person is their own universe. I feel like probably a lot of people are discovering that right now, as they are being deeply encompassed by the realities and the beings of a small number of other people, where those people really are their reality, are becoming their reality.
I love that.
Can you discuss a particular instance where you have been changed by another person?
I would say, I mean, it's easy to say my mom, it's easy to say my dad. I'm going to say my nephew. I don't have any children, and I'm not interested in having any children. And I have godchildren, but you know, it's a bit different. Like, you love them, but you may not see them as often, so on and so forth. But my nephew is the closest that I have to like my own kid. I see him fairly often. Like, I just saw him today. So I might see him maybe between 1 to 3 times every week.
Okay.
I see him more often now because, of course, he's not in school, and I visit my sister and, you know, all sorts of other things. So I do see him more often now. But it definitely, like I said, it's the closest that I have to my own child. And when he was born and I came to the hospital and I saw his littleness. So, God, he's so cute. I didn't really get like how a parent could love a kid so much until I saw him. I mean, I'm pretty giving in general. Would give the last dollar I have. I don't mess around with my food though. May not be that generous with my food, but I'm pretty generous with all other things. My mom will be the first one to tell you, like, she'll give you whatever she has, but don't ask her for any, don't ask her for foods. Don't ask her for a Pop-Tart. Don't ask her for a bite of cheese. Don't ask her for food, period. So yeah, no, I don't, that's where I draw the line. But in that moment when I saw him, like, I would do anything for him. I would give him, I mean, even the last of my pretzels. A couple times he asked and I said no, but in my mind, I regretted that. So that was a clear sign that I am changing, right? But I would die for him. I would go to jail for him. I would kill for him. I would do anything to protect him, his innocence, his joy. It's just, he is just a light. He is so special. And I didn't know, I mean, you love deeply, right? But it feels different. It feels different. And he has truly, truly changed me. And it's funny because it's like, you're supposed to be teaching him. You're helping him to be, you know, a little boy. You're helping him to grow up to be a little man. And you're hoping that the things that you're talking to him about, that he's learning from you, are going to be things that he can carry throughout his entire life. But at the same time, he's teaching you. He's taught me some things, like, about boundaries. Like, how are you 6 and teaching me about boundaries? I'm a grown woman. Like, how? But he is. And about how he's a sovereign being, just unbelievable. So I've learned from him, and I just watch him be him without apology. And it's very inspiring, very inspiring. But yeah, I can't say enough about my nephew. He's crazy, but I love him. He just can't be quiet, can't sit still.
How would you define what it means to be a sovereign being?
How I define being a sovereign being is just one without apology. You get to be you, unapologetically. You don't allow other people to control you through their fear tactics. You get to recognize that you are your own person. You are in control of making your own decisions. You don't have to worry about being ostracized or all those other things. Like, none of that stuff matters. You have your own deep connection with Source, God, Jehovah, whatever you want to call it. And you know what you need to know without influence of other people, positive or negative. Just knowing that you are your own person. That's my simple definition.
How do you personally know when you're making the right decision?
Half the time I don't know. But I also believe that
how do you go about determining whether or not you're making the right decision? What is your decision-making process?
You know me, like, on a whole nother level, so you already know. You know how I roll. It takes me so long to make, big decisions. Like, I need all the facts. I got 72 tabs open on my computer with research of all these different aspects of the thing that I'm getting ready to do. I have conversations and I feel into it and I ask Source, and it's a long process. But when I boil it all down, it's just that I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision, which is why it takes so long. But I know my own name, that whatever decision I make, especially when it's come forward, if I simply quiet the noise and I feel into it, I have a deep enough bond with Source, and I pay attention to intuition, and I'm pretty good at discerning intuition over fear, then I can trust and have faith that I'm being led to the right thing. But it's a hard process. That's not how I like to roll, but I'm finding that it's easier to roll that way, even though I may not have all of the information. So I'm kind of like, I feel like this, but there's still this here. You need all the facts. Get all the facts first. Then put it up on a board and spitball and call up your colleagues, and you can have a vote and they can help you do it. So it's a little bit of a war right now, but I'm transitioning more into being led as opposed to having to do it myself.
How do you know when your intuition is speaking to you? How does your intuition speak to you?
It speaks a couple different ways. It speaks through, like, I can hear a clear voice sometimes that I know is my intuition, because it's like nothing else it's not my normal, It's like something else. Sometimes it speaks to me through a feeling, and the feeling is just, it feels like this divine invitation. So it's just like, ooh, yeah, of course I'm gonna go there, because that feels nice. So I want to feel that all the time. The other thing, I was doing a class and I was telling people about body testing, and one of the ways that early on when I was doing body testing, I told people to close their eyes and just take some deep breaths to kind of be more present with their body, and then just say the word no, 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 like repeatedly, and then check in to see where they feel that in their body. Where do they feel it? How do they feel it? What do they notice? What's the level of intensity? And then let them sit with that. And then I had them do the opposite. Yes, 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 and see what happens. So for me, what I found is when it's a yes, my body also communicates through, of course, intuition, because it's all pretty much the same. It's like in my chest, and it feels like a flower is like blooming. So I noticed that, it's blooming. Okay, that's a yes, kind of situation. So there's just a few ways that it communicates, but it's always very clear. Hasn't always been though, but it's definitely a lot more clearer now.
If you could say in 2 or 3 sentences how you getting from
2 or 3? Do you know me? You do know me.
You're like, you mean 23 minutes?
Girl, did you hear that voice note this morning?
I did.
I'm so sorry.
I listened to the whole thing. I did the whole loop around the neighborhood.
I left it in 2 sittings. I'm like, if I didn't have that meeting this morning, it would have been like 30. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. I listened to it all at once. It was like a single message for me.
Yes. Yeah, folks, I'm a little wordy. I'm a talker.
A Gemini. It's funny because last week's guests were Mandy and Allie, both also Geminis, and now this week you are a Gemini.
Those air signs. What you gonna do with us?
No, I'm also one.
That's fine.
The aliens. I'm an Aquarian alien.
Yes.
Hello, Earthlings.
This is what we do, folks. I know you. If you're wondering what our nature church is like, this is
really what it's like. This is really what it's like. We cause so many scenes. It's one of those situations when the people are like grabbing their children, like, let's just walk over here because we're not sure about those ladies. They're laughing a little too hard.
Yeah, social distancing was going on well before with us. You want to break up the party? Invite us. So you said 2 to 3 sentences, girl.
So yeah, it doesn't have to be 2 to 3 sentences. I mean, because the question is one that a whole book could be written about.
As your questions are. They are fantastic questions, by the way. I was like, I know she's going to bring the heat, so I had to be ready.
Some of my spiritual gifts. Okay. So you said that your intuition now is very clear and very loud, but it hasn't always been loud and clear. So can you talk a little bit about the process of not being able to hear yourself versus now being able to hear yourself loud and clear? What happened between constant doubt as opposed to constant knowing and constant certainty about what your intuition is saying to you?
Wow, it's a great question. I've already taken up a sentence. That's 2 sentences right there. Maybe 3. Next question. No, just kidding. I think it's really the confidence with it. You feel it, you hear it, you're not really sure.
What did you do to build confidence in that area?
I listened to it. I heard it and I'm like, this is different than, don't do that, girl, you're gonna die. It was different than that. You don't need to wear that dress. It was, different than that voice. It felt more gentle. And I was like, well, this is different. Before I even was able to name it, I said, I think I want to listen to that. And as I listen to that, whenever it comes up, it's never been wrong. So now, as a result of whatever it says, I'm just like, I may not want to do it because I think that I know, like I know the future. I got a magic 8-ball somewhere. And I'm like, invite Hillary to my Sacred Nature Church. No? All right. She ain't coming. But intuition is like, you need to roll out the red carpet for Hillary. I'm like, I don't even know that lady. It's my sacred space. I love this park. I'm going to have to get another day if she's crazy. But it ended up being perfect. So just listening to it and continuing to listen to it and knowing that it's never been wrong. Now I don't question it. I may not like what it says, but I do what I'm led to do.
Do what you're told.
That's right. I may not take much good direction in many areas and from many people, but intuition speaks. I'm like, damn it. Fine. Okay. It's usually how that conversation goes.
Do you feel like the woman who also showed up to do the same meetup, who was extremely negative, also played a part in our forming a bond that day?
Oh, you are so good. You are so good. I never thought about that, but she absolutely did. She absolutely did. I mean, so folks, the story really quickly, we get to the meetup. The organizer wasn't there. She had she had some sort of emergency. So there were 3 people, myself, Hillary, and another lady who was very, very negative. Overcast, it was spinning out. I'd never done a labyrinth walk, and I don't think that she had either. So we were standing around like, okay, what are we going to do? And she complained about the lateness. Where's the organizer? She doesn't know what to do. These meetups are horrible. The whole thing. So Hillary's like, I know what to do. And then she says, so she explains it, and then she starts off, and I'm like, oh, okay. So we start following her. Get to the middle, do what you do. And then the other lady was like over it. She starts talking to some other lady who's coming there with a dog and is talking loudly, and we're trying to have a whole moment. And I think that it definitely played into our bond because we could tell the story and laugh about it. But it's like we were both like, it was a knowing. Like, I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, and we're like, really, lady? And so it's like, okay, I could see that you know what's going on and you had like a presence about you. And it was definitely evident because the complete opposite was in the space. So when you have that, it's focusing on that, you're like, okay, that's craziness over there. But we have like, centered, grounded, this other lady. So when Intuition said you should invite her to Nature Church, if Intuition would have said invite the other lady to Nature Church, I probably, even though I know Intuition is always right, I probably wouldn't have done it because she was really off the chain. But I think it did. I think you're right. Thanks, lady.
Just as a demonstration that, the trickster is still very much important in leading one forward. If you had to name one practice that has helped facilitate your personal development, what would it be? Obviously, everyone has an infinite number of practices, but if you had to say, this has been the one thing that for me has constantly and consistently and repeatedly returned as something, I know I can rely on this thing when I need to move through something.
I do the emotional freedom technique. It is a stress relief technique where you are tapping on energy meridian points around your body as you are expressing your emotions around something that has happened. It's a way that I use it for a number of things. So not only do I use it to help relieve stress around things. I also use it in the morning to set intentions around things that I desire to experience during the day. I use it to help me to process feelings that I have. I use it to meditate. I don't really meditate. I would like to do more of that, but it's not something that I do regularly. Today, earlier, I had a moment where just emotion just swelled up. I was really emotional. So I just lightly tapped on my collarbone area and I just breathed. And I just let whatever the feeling was rise up from my stomach, come through my chest and then out, because it was something that needed to be healed, whatever it was. I didn't even have a name for it. I just let it happen, let the tears flow. And just that simple act, it just made me feel more present in my body because I'm touching my body as I'm doing things, That definitely has been a practice I can always go back to. And I know that it's going to help me move through some things.
Particularly given what's going on now, a lot of the changes that are happening globally, spiritually, culturally, given the coronavirus and the impact of the coronavirus, how do you envision the world a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Ooh, that's a great question. I am trying really hard to be hopeful about what happens. I think whenever there's been a major shift, it's typically brought about by some sort of event, a cataclysmic event, whether it's earthquake or a major tsunami or, bombing or something like that. It's usually been brought about by something that's just, typically. And usually the days after it happens, you just see the solidarity in people. You see the heart of people, the true nature of people, giving, loving, and whatnot of people. But then typically, life happens, life continues to happen. And then that becomes a very distant memory and people start to go back to, where they were before, arguing over stupidity, and focusing on themselves. So I'm hopeful that this is going to be what we'll see more of is creativity and ways to connect with each other. What I'm concerned about is that this is going to make us physically disconnected simply because there's no vaccine at this point. So we're not really allowed to get close to people. We're not really allowed to touch someone on the shoulder. We're not really allowed to have close, intimate conversations with someone. You have to maintain your distance. That mask in and of itself is going to create a disconnect between other people simply by the fact that you have this apparatus on your face. They now can't see the bottom half of your face. So how are they going to see when you smile? How are they going to see when you're showing sadness? How are they going to see that? They're going to have to be more present and focus on your eyes, or you're going to have to be creative in showing that you're smiling at someone. You might have to do the nod, but that's still, disconnected. So I am hopeful that people will find creative ways and continue to find creative ways to connect with other people. I mean, we're seeing things like, battles on Instagram. We have D Nice, who is doing amazing work, just DJing, and now he's putting out different causes as he DJs every night, even if he's on for 2 times a day. He's getting 30,000+ people. Once he broke that ground for 100,000 people around the world on Instagram Live, watching him and listening to his music as he's playing it, like, that's how we're connecting. You tap into the energy of that. But we absolutely have to find ways to continue to connect. And I think that people are seeking it out more because you can. You go to the grocery store now and it's like people are saying hi to you in such a way. It's like clearly they want to talk. They want to hear another voice other than their kids or their spouse or their parents or whomever is in the house. They're like, another voice. But it's very clear that we are hungry for connection with others. And it was very easy to ignore that because we had so many distractions. Just go to the movie, get in your car, go someplace, do all these things. But now, where are we going? To the bedroom, to the bathroom, the living room, maybe a grocery store, but we're not going anywhere else. So things are changing for us on a different level. And I just hope that we continue to have that same energy when a vaccination is found, hopefully when they do that, because connection is really important. And I think we are really starting to see just how important it is.
Today is Beltane, which is the cross-quarter day between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. And in the Celtic calendar and Celtic spirituality, the cross-quarter days are the first days of the season, so that the solstice is in the middle of the season, the equinox is in the middle of the season, as opposed to the beginning and the end of the season, which kind of makes sense. It's kind of like the full moon, you know?
Yeah.
And so I always see the cross-quarter days as sort of a day of reflection. What were the intentions that I set for the beginning of the season, and how far have I come? What are the intentions? How do I want to maintain them for the remainder of the season? So what intention do you have for the remainder of the spring season?
The intention that I have for the remainder of the spring season is still the same intention that I had as I started the year. Part of the letting intuition lead, because I can't possibly think of the ways in which this is going to come about, especially since everything has changed right now. But I'm just going to have faith and trust, and it will happen. So my intention, I have 2. I set these one-word intentions every year, and I like to see how they come about, how they show up. The first word was fun. I chose fun because I really wanted to rediscover what was fun to me. I've always known what I loved to do when I was a teenager, known what I loved to do when I was a young adult. And now that I'm older, it's like those things, do they still interest me? Do they? And some of them do not. So I wanted to find what those things are for me now. And I wanted to do it through not just getting some list. All right, how's painting? Do you like painting? You don't like painting. I didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to go on Living Social or Groupon or say yes to more activities with my friends and just kind of feel into or run into these things that I now find to be fun. And, I didn't know I would love to do that. Now I need to do it all the time. So because I can't leave my crib, I got to find other ways to have fun. Like, this is fun for me. I'm loving having this conversation. This is great. But I know I'm already a talker. I like connecting with people, but I guess I'm realizing now just how much more I really, truly enjoy it. The other intention is dare. So I have this thing where even if I have a sense of fear, if someone dares me to do it and I agree to do it, it will get done. It doesn't matter I dare you to jump out of a plane, and like, you know what? I'll take you up on that. I will be jumping out of a plane. So I decided that was a really important word to add to my word of fun, so that I can dare myself, like, I dare you to do that. So even if I had the fear, like, don't go out on the dance floor and dance by yourself. Nobody's on the dance floor. You don't need to be out there. I dare you to get out there. Then I'm going out there, kind of thing. So it was twofold. Again, I can't see or I can't imagine how it's going to come to pass, given that so much has changed. But I can still see where I am daring myself to do things that I wouldn't normally do, how that's showing up. I'm seeing still, it might not be like this whole monumental, I've thrown myself off a cliff and I came back like, oh, I didn't even know I like base jumping, like, something like that. But I'm still seeing places where I'm like, oh, that is fun. For example, my sister and I, we do puzzles. I didn't realize that puzzles were really fun. So She picked a beautiful one, and I would go over there. Midweek puzzle break is what we call it. So every Wednesday I'd go over to her house and we would puzzle for like an hour. She put on house music or African house music. We would share a single serve, like one of those small bottles of wine, because we're not heavy drinkers. And we would be puzzling and talking back to the puzzle and cussing each other out, just fun, friendly competition. Like, you're not doing anything and you haven't been, you know, all this sorts of stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's been so fun and it's been so simple. So we finished the puzzle, 1,000-piece puzzle. We're getting another one. This time we're inviting my mom to participate, and should be fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming over to Hillary's house.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much. It's been so good having you, and I can't wait to have you to real Hillary's house.
Girl, I want all the food.
The food's coming. The food will be there. Also,
I see your Instagram posts with the food. I need that, want that. I need all of it. I'm here for it.
I can feel it.
I feel it too, girl. And then, of course, Morocco.
That too. That's a whole other thing. I told you that showed up in my meditation, Tatiana.
Yep. So that means it's happening. That's
obviously, because the ancestors.
They let us know what way the wind is blowing. Look, yes, they do.
If we want to, that's the other thing besides, you know, feeling in, intuition. That's all. The ancestors, to me, it's like, they know.
They know. And
I am not always trying to listen into what they're trying to tell me.
Sometimes when I get weeks where it's like, okay, we don't have a message for you, I'm like, thank God. I can't take it.
It's like, I'm just going to step over here. Maybe if I move really quiet.
They're not going to notice. You're standing there. Yes.
And they're like, boop, boop, boop. Just so you know, this thing is very important for you to be paying attention to today. Right now.
No!
The last thing that you would think is the thing that you should do. The last person is the one.
It's like, oh God, I can't. It's like, just tell me softly. They're like, no.
They're not trying to be soft.
No. Because they're like, we've been telling you. Softly.
I was going to say, you know why they're not telling us softly? Because you both are like, I don't really know if I need to do that. That's probably just my mind. Like, I don't need to pay attention to that. But I'm sure that's not what they're really trying to tell me.
No,
I know they're trying to tell me something else. So I just could go over here until they're like.
They're telling me to do what exactly it is that I'm doing. That's what they're telling me to do. Which ain't it. It's not it. This was amazing.
It was. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too.